Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, once again, I'm building on a concept we've spoken about in great lengths. The idea that it's impossible to have a conversation with a leftist. You know, generally when you're interacting with another human being, you expect a little bit of intellectual honesty, a little bit of intellectual malleability. Let's say I hold this stance and I'm objectively wrong, but I don't see it. Then someone comes along and proves me wrong. I don't have a counter argument. I'm not going to double down or change the subject. I'm going to say, hey, I haven't seen it from that perspective, and actually you're right, now I do see it. I've officially changed my stance, or at least I'm going to entertain your position and do some more research and look into it and really try to think about it. I've done that throughout my entire life. You guys have seen it on the channel over the last almost 5 years. Lefties don't do that. When leftists are proved wrong by objective, undeniable fact, or when leftists are called out on their clear hypocrisy, they do the craziest mental gymnastics you could possibly imagine. I mean, they're contortionists. They should be touring the world in high-end circus shows, because what they do, it's simply stunning. And that's why it's impossible to have a conversation with these people. They're just not honest. They deal in buzzwords, everything's political rhetoric, emotion and ideology above the facts, above reality. And one person who's the best at this, or you might even argue the worst when it comes to this kind of thing, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, well, she proves it in this little, let's call it, TikTok interaction. This right here is exactly why it's impossible to have an honest conversation with these leftoids. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks. So I think the intro pretty much lays out the groundwork. I think the context is pretty clear. Now just take a look at this.
Are you for real? So let's talk about this, because so much of our national conversation, which is not a conversation, about immigration is driven by people who could not care less about immigrants. Often people want to say, why aren't you talking about the border crisis? Or why aren't you talking about it in this way? Well, we're talking about it. They just don't like how we're talking about it, because it's not a border crisis. It's an imperialism crisis. It's a climate crisis. It's a trade crisis. And also, it's a carceral crisis. They want to say, what about the surge? Well, first of all, just gut check, stop. Anyone who's using the term surge around you consciously is trying to invoke a militaristic frame. And that's a problem, because this is not a surge. These are children, and they are not insurgents, and we are not being invaded, which, by the way, is a white supremacist idea, philosophy.
This is what happens when you call out a leftist on their clear hypocrisy. The question was, why are you not addressing the border crisis and the kids in cages like you used to? Remember, back when Donald Trump was president, this was the biggest issue of the time. It dominated the news cycle for not only a couple weeks, but a couple months. Donald Trump supposedly was keeping children in cages. He was locking immigrants up and separating families, kidnapping kids, and putting them in concentration camps. That is literally what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was saying. Concentration camps, for Pete's sakes. It was this big thing, and then all of a sudden, as Joe Biden took office, and the same practice essentially continued, although probably less of the family separation, because let's just say Biden doesn't care so much about young children being trafficked. No, he'd rather play the optics game, but essentially it's the same practice, but even much more widespread, considering the southern border is in full-blown crisis mode right now, and of course, the initial glaring hypocrisy, considering all the photos that released at the time were actually from the Obama administration, so this is an Obama-Joe Biden-era practice. Well, all of a sudden, the rhetoric stopped. All of a sudden, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez isn't taking sad-looking pictures in front of parking lots anymore, and when questioned on this hypocrisy, when questioned on the clear biased political nature of her activism and the dishonesty of her activism, her response is a bunch of pseudo-intellectual, word salad, buzzword nonsense. Listen, okay? Listen.
All right, listen, okay, listen.
Anybody who uses the word surge, that's militaristic language. That is not an argument. Surge is a militaristic approach to the border because I guess it's linguistic connection to the word insurgent. All right, that's a little bit interesting. I guess I'm no longer allowed to say that Donald Trump's surging in the polls. I'm no longer allowed to say that the stock market is surging. That's militaristic language and that should be banned. Is that the freaking argument? You can't use the term surge even though what we've seen at the southern border is objectively a surge. Let's go ahead and take a look at immigration numbers during the Trump years, and then of course extend the timeline during the Biden administration. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but that looks like a surge. If that was Joe Biden's polling numbers, I'm sure every Democrat, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, would be saying that Joe Biden is surging in the polls. It's this constant emotional manipulation and these sort of games that they play because they want to avoid the actual facts of the situation. When the facts don't benefit them, when the facts don't work for them, when the facts are counter to their arguments and their political stances and their rhetoric, well, all of a sudden, the facts and the words themselves that are used to describe the facts, well, those words must be banned. Again, how are you supposed to have a conversation about the border, about immigration policy, when this is what we're dealing with? This is the other side. It's nothing but woke buzzwords and utter dishonesty. It's not a surge. No, it is. You're lying. She's lying. Okay, well, they're not insurgents. It's just kids. How many times have we heard this? Just like all the crime in the post-2020 BLM riots era was people who were stealing bread to feed their kids. It's objectively dishonest. She's a liar. It's not just kids. It's actually mostly military-aged men. We've covered it a million times. We've seen all the videos. I mean, it's not going to be hard to find.
But if I hadn't brought you in by now, you truly would have died.
It's nothing but military-age men who are clear economic migrants, not refugees or asylum seekers, people who want to illegally enter the United States, either file false claims of asylum in order to get in and never show up to their court date, or of course, avoid all of that sticky and annoying bureaucracy and just run into the country undetected so they can work illegally at the clear detriment of American workers and low-skilled laborers so they can siphon money out of the nation and send it back home. I mean, let's be freaking real here. We know exactly what's going on, but when you engage with a leftist, it's nothing but manipulation. Oh, and not to mention another lie from Mrs. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She keeps saying it's immigration, migrants. No, it's illegal immigration and illegal migrants. People who are subverting American border laws and sneaking into the country illegally, not through the legal process. I don't know, when millions of people are all engaged in an obvious, clear crime, an undeniable crime, when they're surging the border, I think you could probably accurately describe it as insurgents. Are they military insurgents? No, but they're certainly criminal insurgents. And it's certainly an invasion. I mean, by definition, it's an invasion. When you see videos like this, when you see the southern border looking like this, I think that could be accurately described as an invasion. But no, that's racism. The kids. Oh my God, they're not allowed to talk about it that way. It's not an immigration crisis. It's not a border crisis. It's a climate crisis and an imperialism crisis. It's a carceral crisis. Nothing but nonsense buzzwords. Once again, I come back to the initial point of the video. We cannot have honest conversations with these people. You point out clear hypocrisy, and the response isn't even relevant. It's a bunch of guilt-tripping nonsense, a bunch of pseudo-academic, left-wing rhetoric, a complete change in the subject. We cannot have conversations with people who aren't intellectually honest. And I'm just going to say it, whether it's viewed as a generalization or not, most of these leftists, and especially the activist types, the neo-Marxist revolutionaries, well, they're intellectually dishonest. They're liars, they're manipulators, everything's political rhetoric. It's always about building this premise that they have the moral high ground. They're the people who have compassion and care, and you're a bad person. That's not an argument. That's a leftist power tactic. And again, I come back to an argument I've made before. The people who don't care, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, are the people who continue to embolden coyotes and cartels and their human smuggling operations. Those are the people who don't care. Those are the people who don't value human life. Those are the people who are scamming, frauding millions of people with these false promises of asylum. And the people who are criticizing this out-of-control crisis, this surge, those are the people who care about the kids that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez always uses as an emotional political tool, political weapon. Those are the people who care about what happens to these children caught up in human trafficking. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.